What's up, Team PCC? So we are back, and today we're going to be covering a very interesting topic that many of you are going to relate with, and that is perfectionism. Perfectionism versus excellence. Overcoming perfectionism and finally being able to moderate, to not fall victim to all or nothing thinking and black and white thinking in your health and fitness journey. So let's talk about it. Number one, what is perfectionism? So perfectionism is the tendency to really think that things need to be perfect before we finish something, we hit complete, or before we give ourselves credit. That's really the big piece there. Perfectionists and people who struggle with perfectionism are people who struggle to give themselves credit when they are putting effort towards a goal. So perfectionism in a fitness journey looks something like this. Maybe you're tracking macros and you are not satisfied unless you are zeroing the macro out to a T, and you are really becoming neurotic around the fact that you are weighing your food out to the gram because it has to be perfect or it has to be accurate. Another way that perfectionism can show up in a negative sense with fitness and with nutrition is that if something can't be perfect, then you don't do it at all. Because if you can't track something out to eat and have the estimate be perfect, then it's wrong and it's not good enough. And so you don't end up tracking anything, which, as we probably know at this point, is actually worse than the prior outcome, right? And in a fitness journey, there is no real place for perfectionism to thrive. And so here's the thing about perfectionism, and if you are a recovering perfectionist, you identify with these things so much, the reality is that you have to acknowledge the fact that your perfectionism did serve you and does serve you in many, many ways. The fact that you have a high standard for your life, the fact that you want things to be as good as possible, it's probably led to a lot of success in your life, whether it was in school, getting good grades, or if it was at work, advancing your career. And it's not necessarily something that we want to discard. There's a quote by, I believe it's a German philosopher, who said something along the lines of, make sure that when you're casting out your demons, you're not accidentally also getting rid of the best parts of yourself. What that means is that if you have perfectionistic tendencies, there are positive benefits to it, and we can channel that and we can drive it. So we don't need to throw out perfectionism, because there is a part of that that is healthy and is driven and is going to move you forward. But it's when it actually keeps us from doing the things that we need to do, or leads us to self-sabotage because of that all or nothing or black or white thinking, that's where we need to really shift towards a healthy pursuit of excellence rather than falling victim to the perfectionist all or nothing thinking. So again, if you are struggling with the concept maybe and you're wondering, where does perfectionism show up? So it shows up with a lot of those nutrition examples that I mentioned. It also shows up with making mistakes. So let's say you've made a mistake with your diet, or you have not hit your macros, or you overate, or you mistracked something. Perfectionism really shows its ugly face when we react to that with the thought process of, and this might sound familiar, oh man, I messed up. Well, that means I failed, and that means I'm completely unsuccessful, and that means that I insert morality, insert something that actually makes you a bad person. There is what those thoughts actually bring us. They bring us lots of guilt and lots of shame. So we then say, well, screw it. I'm going to do whatever I want, eat whatever I want, because if I already messed up, what's the point? And this is such a faulty and flawed way of thinking, because if you overate by 100 calories, you could totally brush that off and move on. But if your perfectionistic thinking gets in the way, then what typically happens is that you're doing more damage after that because of your reaction to the perceived failure. Perfectionism also shows up as procrastination. So if you find yourself being somebody who is procrastinating getting a workout in, procrastinating meal prep, procrastinating planning, this can often be because we feel like the task itself is so much bigger than it is. For example, a perfectionist struggling with procrastinating their meal prep might be doing this because they feel like meal prep is a task that is going to take 3 hours, 4 hours, an entire Sunday afternoon, When in reality, what they really needed to do was go buy a rotisserie chicken from Costco, buy some frozen vegetables, and throw some rice in the rice cooker. And they had a decent base of meal prep there. But because they were thinking in the extravagant sense of what is the top standard of the meal prep that I need to do, otherwise I can't do it at all, of prepackaged, individual Tupperwares for breakfast, lunch, dinner, labeling it, tracking the macros ahead of time, and doing all of that. The perfectionist in you is saying, well, if you can't do that, then you might as well do nothing at all. So I'm gonna wait until I have the time to do this meal prep, when in reality, you really just needed 5 to 10 minutes and getting the right groceries, but your perfectionism and all or nothing thinking got in the way. Lastly, I do see perfectionism also show up in this like overwhelming amount of pressure that some clients will tend to put on themselves. This is definitely something that I do as well. And so when we are building, say, positive momentum, we're building some habits, they're stacking up, things are going well. With somebody who's very perfectionistic is typically going to think to themselves, now how do I take it to the max? When in reality, one of the best things that you can do if you have these sorts of tendencies is to learn how to hold some back, because you might be very capable of going full throttle, putting your foot completely on the gas and sprinting towards the goal and doing it all, right? Again, it's back to all or nothing, but now it's on the all side. So if somebody is building habits of eating more protein, getting into the gym, building a routine, and then they immediately think, now I need to track all my macros and take all these supplements and do all this stuff and spend more time because things are going well, this is actually a slippery slope. We want to hold ourselves back a little bit and leave some in the tank. A scale that I often like to use with clients is when it comes to pursuing a goal, I want you as a client to feel like you are at anywhere below an 8 out of 10 of perceived total effort, of how truly effortful and difficult is pursuing this goal for you, and what does it really take from you? Because if we're at a 10 out of 10, that is very surely going to lead us to burnout. Whereas if we're sitting at a 5 or 6 out of 10, we feel like we could give more. That's the headspace that we need to keep in reserve for when life happens, things come up, and we want to be able to keep these habits going through life, things like that. The more we practice these habits, the more automatic they become, and the lower on that 1 to 10 scale we'll rate ourselves. But with perfectionism, we tend to want to sprint all the way, go all the way to 10, do everything we possibly can to make as much progress as possible, when in reality, the real challenge is not what can I add, what can I do more? It's how do I stay really steady on exactly what I'm doing right now. So if you resonate with some of these things, with perfectionism, with all or nothing thinking, with this tendency, what I want you to really reframe moving forward is to use that perfectionistic drive to pursue a healthy pursuit of excellence. So perfectionism is typically driven by fear. Fear of failure, fear of letting others down, fear of disappointing others, and is really driven by standards that are not set by themselves, arbitrary standards that don't actually mean anything to you, but is more about checking boxes. When in reality, we want to pursue healthy levels of excellence, holding high standards that are aligned with our values, being driven by growth and by learning rather than fear of failure. And one of the biggest principles of a healthy pursuit of excellence is how we treat failure. So with perfectionism, we're afraid of it. We think it's the worst thing ever, and it is a trigger for us to self-sabotage. Whereas with a healthy pursuit of excellence, failure is an opportunity. Failure is an opportunity to learn, to grow, is something to embrace and to look forward to. And so what we like to say at PCC is to fail forward. So to fail and ask yourself, when I mess up, when I didn't hit my numbers, when I missed my workout, when I didn't plan accordingly, what can I learn from this? How is this actually an opportunity? How can I flip this to be a good thing that I learn not to make the same mistakes twice? And rather than being so burdened by guilt and shame and other negative emotions when we're faced with failures or slip-ups, we are actually encouraged and excited, because the more that we fail, the faster we learn and the faster we get to where we're going, because then we've actually built off of the failure. We've looked at it with an open mind and with curiosity so that we actually improve from it, versus somebody who's perfectionistic might make the same mistakes many and many, many times because they're more consumed by the negative emotions that they have around the failure than actually being able to productively work with it and look at it objectively to see where they can improve. So if you're struggling with perfectionism, you're really going to want to emphasize embracing failure as feedback, embracing failure as a good thing. And I also want you to shift your mindset from holding expectations over yourself of I have to do these things or else I am insert bad thing here, to holding yourself to a higher standard. And so people who have a pursuit of excellence that is healthy rather than perfectionism, they have standards for their life rather than expectations. So it's the standard that I behave in X, Y, and Z ways because that is who I am and that's what's aligned with my values. It's what I want to do, not what I feel like I have to do. And that shift is so important when it comes to really getting away from these negative connotations around perfectionism. Same idea here. When we don't meet expectations, it means that we do not measure up. It means we are less than. It means we are not enough. When we do not meet standards, it's an opportunity for growth and development because a standard is something to work towards. And lastly, I just want to remind you, if you're struggling with perfectionism, there's one really important lesson that you need to know. And that is, you're literally not supposed to be good at this. This is a lifelong pursuit of learning how to have healthy habits and maintain them in every season of life that you go through. You're literally supposed to be bad at this. You are trying to undo years and possibly decades of unhealthy relationships with food, with exercise, with how you treat yourself and talk to yourself in your body. What makes you think that you're supposed to be good at this out the gate? Especially if you're not somebody like me who has degrees in this and certifications in this and teaches other people things like this. But even coaches who have coaches, you're allowed to be bad at this. And so one thing I will also encourage you to do is to just embrace sucking. Like literally embrace being bad at tracking macros, at getting your workouts in, at knowing what to do in the gym. Like expect to suck. And that's actually going to make the journey so much more enjoyable and fun for you because your expectations for yourself are all the way down here and you're working towards developing that higher standard and that knowledge and that efficacy. But don't go in with the expectation that you're going to be good at this because you literally have been learning the wrong things for years. So just give yourself some grace in that. Remember that it is a learning process and all of us here are going through it together. So you're not going to be good at this. Let's stop expecting that and let's embrace learning the white belt mentality and really just embracing the fact that every new obstacle that we fail at is an opportunity for growth. So that is perfectionism versus excellence. That is all for this module. Let us know, let your coach know what you took from this and what your takeaways were, and we'll see you back here in the next one.